How is economic development changing now? And what's a case study from Ohio have to teach us today in conversations ahead of the Introduce conference? Hey, I'm Chris Wink. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Technically, the news organization with a community of technologists and entrepreneurs. This is typically our culture builder, company building live interview. But over the next couple of weeks, we are previewing big conversations ahead of our Introduce conference that's taking place May 12th in Philadelphia. Today, I'm particularly excited about our conversation around trends in economic development. How does economic development change in and around the pandemic? To do that, we're joined by J.P. Nauseef. He's the president of JobsOhio. I also have Kristi Clouse, also of JobsOhio on the talent side. We're going to hear more from them. JP and Kristi, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us today.
Thanks, Chris.
Of course. So I have to say, I have followed in our economic development reporting, the last decade of the JobsOhio journey has been an interesting one. You guys are unique in your economic development strategy. I want to give you a little bit of time to tell us why you're unique, because then I want to dive in and drill in on what you're seeing. So JP, how do you guys do it different in Ohio? Sell us on it a bit, and then we'll get into details. Why are you guys different as Job?
We love it here in Ohio, and we believe we have a very unique value proposition for business and for the workforce. But our economic development platform is unique in the country. There's nothing else like it. Over 10 years ago, about 11 years ago, the governor and the legislature privatized economic development. They spun out the Department of Development, and they named it JobsOhio. So we're essentially the state of Ohio's private economic development corporation. So being private has its advantages. We deal with companies every day looking to expand their business, looking to locate their business here. And they share all kinds of very sensitive and private information, competitive information. And as a private entity, we do not have to share that information. We're not compelled by sunshine laws like economic development organizations are that are part of a state government. So that's one of the advantages, one of the things that makes us unique. But in addition to being private, we have our own funding source that is separate from tax dollars and separate from government budget cycles. Again, in 2013, JobsOhio went to the bond markets, raised $1.4 billion, and purchased the rights to operate Ohio's spirituous liquor enterprise. Ohio is one of the few control states that controls the distribution of spirituous liquors. So we bought the rights to do that in 2013, and then we used the profits from the liquor enterprise to fund economic development. So we have a stable source of funding. And of course, that allows us to enter into long-term strategic agreements with these companies. Again, many of them are looking to make significant investments, and there's a long-term commitment they make, and we're able to have the financial resources and wherewithal to commit in the out years through that arrangement. And that generates, last year, generated over $300 million of net profit that we use to fund economic development. And then we go into the market, companies and families and workforce, when they locate to a metropolitan area. They don't necessarily pick a state, they pick a city and a community. And so we go into the marketplace when we cite deals. We do that through 6 regional network partners. They know their communities upside down and inside out. So we're able to bring the resources and the deal making of a central organization, but we're able to deliver it with a nice local, soft Ohio touch. And then, of course, at the center of that's our people. We pull our people from the private sector, and then we transform them into economic developers. And that platform is unique in the country. There's not another platform like it. We're hitting our stride 11 years into our existence. Last year, we had a record year. Ohio had a record year. JobsOhio had a record year for new job creation, for new payroll creation, new capital investment as companies flee the expensive coasts with the maybe not such an affordable quality of life. Other businesses reshore, bringing in an open and secure supply chain right here in Ohio. We're 1 hour. A 1 hour flight from and a 1 day drive from 60% of the population of the U.S. and Canada. So it's really an ideal location. And now that we've got on the radar, and Intel's probably the most visible example, the largest deal in Ohio history. And Intel's going to build the largest semiconductor manufacturing facility in the world and configure a supply chain right here in Ohio. That's probably the most visible example of what many people are starting to desire. And that's that balance between success with your business and success with your quality of life, your family, and community. You can do those things together. They can coexist in Ohio.
Let's dive a bit into that idea of talent. I should also note for those listening at home, yes, I started this presentation with a microphone in front of me, but not a microphone turned on. So hopefully my audio now sounds different than it did 2 minutes ago. But such is life. We have on the line here also your senior managing director of talent at JobsOhio. I think that might fit a narrative that we at Technically have seen over the last couple of decades, which is there was once a story that wherever the jobs are, the people go, and increasingly there's a conversation of the companies go where the people are. And I wonder how much that's something that you guys have seen at JobsOhio. How much is your focus around the people who might attract the companies? Is that something that you're working on, Kristi? Tell me a little bit about why you're on this call. Why are you so valuable to JobsOhio?
I think, yes, that is for sure the trend in economic development. And to JP's points about how we were stood up, be flexible and nimble and agile, that was really where the talent team came into play back in 2017. And we've continued to evolve. I think to JP's point, we're extremely nimble and agile at JobsOhio. I think that is one of the things that make us unique. It's a factor of our team, but also because of our flexible and sustainable funding. And we've been able to do that with our talent and workforce efforts. So Ohio itself is structured similar but different to the other states that we compete with on an economic development project. We have a lot of partners in workforce development. And what we have done at JobsOhio is really try to stand up a unique incentive that is tailored to the company itself and where they need to access that talent. And then what we do is we pull partners together, and where we can't quite get something filled, we'll fill that gap from a JobsOhio perspective because we can. So an emerging pipeline strategy, we try to retain and grow more people here in Ohio to help those companies. And we also help try to attract them from outside the state and boomerang them back in, leveraging academic institutions that have alumni, but also just individuals who may have experienced Ohio or the Midwest and think family may be a valuable asset to come back to, or better cost of living. So those are kind of our strategies that we try to tailor with our companies. And a lot of our structure that we were stood up with definitely help us be unique in that asset mapping and gap filling for companies specific to their talent acquisition needs.
Tell me a little bit about this Intel case study. You guys are quite proud of it. It's an interesting one insofar that it mixes some concept of advanced manufacturing with traditional manufacturing available jobs, but obviously it's hard tech after a couple decades of obsession around digital transformation and software jobs. This is a classic hard tech role. So tell me a little bit about what the Intel case study means to you guys, and I'd love to use it as an example.
Intel is a well-known global company. It's really the remaining significantly large American semiconductor company. But over the years, like many of their competitors, have shifted their supply chain and their manufacturing to areas of the world where they believe they could get a lower cost of labor and lower manufacturing costs. The great thing about Intel for a state like Ohio and for us is we over the years, over the decades, as we've seen population migrate west and south, like many Midwestern states. We saw NAFTA in the 90s, a lot of manufacturing go south of the border. And then in the 00s and the teens, supply chains head over into places in Asia. Slowly but surely, our elected leaders worked on our business climate. In the face of listening to terms like Rust Belt or flyover state or being referred to as Iowa, those of us that stayed here really understood the unique value proposition we had. And as we slowly started moving from 30s and 40s out of 50 states in business climate to now we're in the top 10 and top 5, Intel's announcement and decision to choose Ohio was really the most visible recognition that a lot of hard work that Ohio's done to create one of the most livable states in America has arrived. And we had already achieved record numbers last year before the Intel project, but the Intel project is so visible, and the significant earned media that Ohio has received from the announcement of that deal has taken a pipeline that was already overflowing with strategic opportunity and really blown it off the charts. Now, again, for people that have lived in the Midwest and have lived in Ohio, we understood the value of the balance between affordable quality of life, but still having amazing business opportunities. And now in a COVID calibrated economy, a lot of people and a lot of businesses have had a chance to reflect on what's valuable and important long-term. And I think a lot of the global economy, national economy are starting to see that balance is very important to long-term success, and you can find it in Ohio.
Naturally, in recent years, economic development groups have gotten pushback around whether, again, should our focus be on attracting companies through incentive programs, or should we focus on people? There's a genuine criticism of do we pit states against each other? I'm like, how do you guys view other U.S. states versus other countries? Like, what's your relationship with what should we all do? Speaking to economic development people around the country, what do you think like your peer group should be thinking about in how we are working together, as opposed to like the race of the bottom, as it's sometimes called?
Well, we see these numbers being thrown around in incentive dollars, and it can be quite disconcerting to a public that's wondering, where are these dollars going? Is it corporate welfare? What is it exactly? Ohio, we try to focus on being the best state that we can be. We don't try to be someone that we're not. We're not claiming that we have beaches, but the way we've constructed our deal making at JobsOhio and in Ohio is that every deal that we do, no matter how large the sums that you see exchanging hands, every one of them is required to produce a return on investment for Ohioans, and they do. The way we calculate that return on investment is that the payroll taxes generated by the net new jobs created from these deals always is more than the dollars of incentive that went in to entice the deal to be here in the first place. And what we found, and we look back at the data in the last 10 years, is that when the companies decide to expand in Ohio or locate to Ohio, they have dramatically overperformed. 160% more than the commitments on jobs, over 200% more on the commitments on payroll, and close to 300% the commitments of capital investment. And so what they're finding, the companies, when they do choose Ohio, they're finding that they perform very well, and they always produce a return to Ohioans in the form of net payroll taxes back to the state.
Another big trend or initiative, I should say, that you guys are taking on is this major JobsOhio campaign, selling Ohio in key markets, a $50 million campaign, high profile. Tell us a little bit about why you're taking that on and why it's a bet worth making.
Kristi, you want me to take this, or? I'm happy.
I think you can, and then I can add anything on the talent front, JP.
Fantastic. So really, the governor of Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine, was the inspiration behind this during the middle of the COVID pandemic, just as the shutdowns were starting. And if you remember, Governor Mike DeWine, played a very courageous leadership role early in the formation of what the pandemic was going to mean. And we saw that there would be shifting global markets. And he said he wanted JobsOhio to do whatever we could to make sure that Ohio was in the conversation. And Ohioans, we love these other states in our country. We love the states in our country. We love, if you're in Ohio, you understand that you also have a travel budget and you like to go and visit places like New York and in California and Florida. We love to visit those places. But then if you start to look at what's valuable to businesses, whether it's talent or it's square footage for your business environment, or whether it's acreage and a site that's ready to go, we knew once we laid the numbers out for people that they might see in Ohio that they don't know. And so we decided to take an aggressive approach, buying billboards in the middle of these large markets on the coasts. And we tried to take a cheeky approach to create conversation and amplification beyond the campaign. And we've gotten amazing attraction from that campaign, really defining Ohio for what it is. It's a great place to have this balance without compromise, affordable quality of life and cost of living, but with amazing business and industry opportunities. And that's been something that's resonating with the C-level decision makers to decide where these business expansions go, and also to individuals looking for an alternative to the high cost markets that they live in today.
Yeah, I think, Chris, to your question about the age-old economic people companies, I think to JP's point, this is an aggressive full court press kind of an approach where we're trying to attract companies and talent to Ohio, kind of as an all-in and strategy with the billboards and the other ads that we're doing, as well as Find Your Ohio, which is more the talent portion of that attraction strategy.
I was going to try to just bring up, because the billboards are quite, as to use JP's word, the cheeky is definitely a word, playful, no doubt. I was going to see if I could quickly show one, but I think I've already fooled myself by trying to go live. I'll do that another time. Oh, here we go. Is this one showing up? Here's one of your Austin shout outs. So this is you bringing Ohio into the conversation in some sense, that, and you've mentioned you feel like you've seen impact from this already.
So we measure all of these campaigns to the extent they're measurable, and we measure them from the number of impressions we get on our website all the way to actions that are taken by people that come to the website. For instance, filling out a form for an open position. Kristi Clouse mentioned Find Your Ohio. It's essentially a marketing campaign targeted directly toward talent, toward people that are looking to fill an in-demand technology position, and we are advertising those as well. So we monitor and track these, and we believe we're receiving tremendous value from this, and it's part of a multi-pronged strategy to retain, expand, and attract businesses and talent to Ohio.
A moment ago, you mentioned this, a nationwide conversation. It's an interesting one, close to us technically, as we report primarily in Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, increasingly Midwest. This decades-old shift of Americans increasingly going south and southwest. In the Midwest and the Northeast, we have some of our slower growth states. Tell me a little bit about why you think economic development work can combat that overall trend, why Ohio can buck a trend that seems to be so at such a macroeconomic level.
Well, eventually the pendulum will swing back and level out. I believe what's happened, and these markets are wonderful. I lived in Southern California when I was in graduate school early in my career. I lived in New York for a period of time while I was working in tech. What's happened is many of these states on the coast and these metropolitan service areas have been victims of their own success and what's made them strong. And they've become congested, they've become expensive, unaffordable, and very difficult to live in. Again, when I say that, I mean that it's challenging in those larger markets for a family on a reasonable income to be very successful pursuing their business and investment objectives, but at the same time pursuing success in their family and community objectives, because typically it will take two incomes, significant commute times given the cost per square foot to live in these larger markets. And it's gotten to a point where it's not sustainable, and that those individuals are looking for alternatives. And so you've read a lot about places like Texas and Austin and Florida and Denver, but Ohio has quietly been improving its business climate, been improving its infrastructure and availability of sites, the diversity of our economy and our quality of life. And we're a tremendous receiver site for these families, this workforce, and for the businesses looking to be close to 60% of the market and to do it in an affordable way.
Kristi, a talent perspective on that, we technically have seen quite dramatically in the last couple of years the near tripling of fully remote work, and the overall hours expected to work remotely has opened up lots of conversations. We have begun to see conversations even globally around some small pockets of remote work. Those wages are ticking up as suddenly demand in lower cost centers grow. I wonder how much you guys think about, does the growth in remote work seem like a net gain for Ohio? The ability for someone in a Cleveland to be able to work either locally or work for a company elsewhere, but do so from home. Do you guys see that as a net gain? Any fears around pressure that puts on overall employment? How are you guys looking at remote work as a trend for your work?
I think JP, I'll take it and then you can add from there. I think it is a trend that isn't going anywhere, right? Remote work is not going to go anywhere. It hit us. It was a thing. And then and with the pandemic, it became an even bigger thing, and it's not going to go away. I think for an Ohio perspective, to JP's point, while we're selling the cost of living in Ohio, I think that's a great asset for individuals who have talent that want to live in a place that has low cost of living and can, have a work-life balance, have great quality of life. They can work for those companies outside Ohio or inside Ohio and work remotely. I think the other thing from our perspective is the broadband perspective strategy that the state and JobsOhio has had, because access at home for work from remote, right, will be necessary. And I think for equity across the state, and in particular our rural or urban areas, I think that's a major priority for us as Ohio and JobsOhio, is to make sure there is broadband access and everyone can actually work from home if they would like to, or their company wants them to be doing that. I think that's the bigger play for Ohio and for us in particular, as our strategy and our investments try to bring up economic mobility for all Ohioans.
You guys, I'm going to lose you in a couple minutes here, but a theme that certainly comes to my mind when I look at Ohio is the old Brandeis quote that the United States has 50 laboratories of democracy. The idea that in some portion our republicanism is supposed to allow for lots of different approaches and strategies that theoretically, God willing, you would say the best ideas would they come up, and we should be copying each other constantly and saying that's how we're all getting more competitive and better. I wonder, how much have you guys picked up lessons from other states, other municipalities, as you guys develop your own strategy? It's clear that there are portions of your work that you would expect and would want other states or other municipalities to copy. Tell me a little bit about that. How has your work shifted over 10 years? Have you watched others influence your work? Has the pandemic and seeing what other people do accelerated? Tell me what's changed and what those influences look like for you guys.
There's been significant change. We're a relatively young organization, just 11 years old. And we did learn a lot during COVID, and we expanded our mission quite a bit based on what we learned from collaborating with partners, but also from the opportunities that emerged during the pandemic. When we look back, as an example, when we look back at the prior 10 years, Ohio was doing pretty well, a pretty good sustainable growth, but we noticed that there were elements of our population and of our community that were not participating economically. And for a state like ours to continue sustained growth, we needed to create tools to support those. So in 2019, we started an inclusive economic development initiative to make sure we had tools available to support underrepresented population groups and distressed communities. The interesting part about Ohio, one of the things that is very attractive, if you're at a point in your career where you want, again, a great career opportunity, but you want flexibility as to where you're going to live, where you're going to raise your family. If you want to live in an urban center, you can do that in Ohio. We have 3 very large cities. If you want to live in a suburb, there are healthy suburbs with great school districts. If you want to live on a farm, you can live in a farm. And then I call them hallmark towns. Ohio has small communities that we are investing, along with the governor and lieutenant governor, revitalization grants to create vibrant, small hallmark towns that you see during the holiday season. Those towns actually exist, and Ohio has an abundance of them, and they are experiencing a renaissance right now. We believe that's going to be one of our many competitive advantages, because people want those opportunities. They want an opportunity to live and experience life where they want, without having to sacrifice where they work. You can do all those things in Ohio. So we learned that if you include as many people in diverse communities through your economic development programs, a great diversity of opportunity emerges. And that's what we're finding at Jobs Ohio and in the state of Ohio right now.
And JP, I think it might be worth, from a benchmarking perspective, talking through our innovation strategy and how much benchmarking we did to build that strategy out and around Ohio, and then tailor it to Ohio's strengths in those 3 innovation districts.
I'm happy to go with that. So we knew,
Kristi's doing the interview. I appreciate it, Kristi. Thank you.
So we knew as we were looking out to the future that talent was going to be a significant in-demand commodity, and in particular, we did a pretty thorough economic study of the types of disciplines that are going to be required. We found 90 core disciplines, and as a subset of the STEM fields, and we did a cross section of where Ohio was under-indexed. And we created a program called a strategy called an Innovation District Strategy to fill those gaps so Ohio could compete. And we invested $300 million, $100 million in each innovation district, one in Cleveland, one in Columbus, one in Cincinnati. We did them around anchor institutions. And those anchors were built around R1 research institutions, so very large research capabilities. And we invested $100 million each. Those were matched by an additional $2 billion from each innovation district set of anchors. And what we hope to do there is create placemaking, where we'll have urban revitalization, but also we'll require outcomes from those research institutions that require additional externally sponsored research. That research turns into intellectual property. That intellectual property turns into startup businesses that then turn into large businesses. So we're also requiring the academic institutions that are part of those innovation districts to triple their production of STEM graduates per year. So as an example, the University of Cincinnati and Cincinnati Children's are part of the Cincinnati Innovation District. Currently, University of Cincinnati produces about 800 annual computer science degrees. At the end of the arc of this innovation district investment, they'll be producing close to 2,400 annual computer science degrees. And Cincinnati Children's research will increase through externally sponsored research by an additional 20% research per year. And then we started a growth capital fund so that we have investment dollars to invest in that intellectual property as those businesses and entrepreneurs go from small businesses and dreams to large businesses that produce jobs and long-term quality of life. So innovation districts are another strategy that, again, the governor and Jobs Ohio have invested a significant amount of future resource into.
I'm going to leave it there. JP, Kristi, I so appreciate the conversation, and it's been interesting to watch Jobs Ohio as you guys rethink how economic development works. JP, Kristi, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Christopher. We appreciate the time.
We'll talk real soon. All right, everyone. This is this week's conversation ahead of our Introduce conference. As always, full technically interviews and stories will get linked to below. And I believe right here, you can click and see additional videos from the Introduce conference, in addition to other technically interviewing and reporting. As always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next time. Bye.